Hey educators, we all know that observations are important, but a poorly chosen observation isn't just a waste of time. It can lead to wrong conclusions about the child or a group of children and their learning. With so many types of observations, you don't know which one to choose, and sometimes as a new teacher or educator, you feel a little lost. Don't worry, I'm here to help with my essential guide to writing children's observation in early childhood education and care. In addition to amazing textbooks that I recommend, that's Programming and Planning in Early Childhood Setting by Arthur and others. That's how I learned about different types of observations. You need also to have something that is short and like a cheat sheet. And I think some of us learn really well through videos. So that's why I'm making this tutorial for all the visual learners. And I hope you will learn from it and enjoy it. If you haven't watched the first part where I covered few most important types of observations, please go ahead and watch the link in the description below and also the pinned comment under this video. Here is what we covered. Anecdotal observations, narrative observations that are social cultural model. We talked about developmental checklists, jottings, learning stories, running record, event sample, profile or portfolio, and sample of children's work. We also talked briefly about transcript of children's conversations and language map. Today we are moving on to the next type of assessment, a tool which is called summative assessment. So summative assessment, if you look at three types of assessment for learning, for is formative, assessment of learning, summative, and assessment as learning. It's almost like children are learning to assess themselves and looking at their own meta skills or meta thinking. I really like formative assessment, but without summative assessment, we wouldn't be able to see what my favorite teacher and mentor and inspirational figure, Catherine Hayden, calls a distance traveled by the child. So these summative assessments are all also capturing that, or pretty much capturing distance traveled by the child, or the journey, learning journey, and that's very important. So it is an evaluation of child's progress and achievements at a specific point of time. To conduct summative assessment at the end of your term or academic year to evaluate child's learning outcomes, you need to have previous assessments, which are assessments for learning or formative assessments. You need to have abundance of observations, jottings, learning stories, information from secondary sources like from families and any specialist or allied health specialist that you involved to create really comprehensive summary of child's overall progress. Progress and distance traveled, yes, so very important key concepts here. It's definitely an important part of transition when child moves from one room to another, or even when they transition from home to early childhood setting, or when they transition from early childhood setting to big school. That's very important. And we all know that reports, transitional reports, are also a type of summative assessment. The summative assessment provides this comprehensive overview or snapshot of child's learning and skills that they've learned, knowledge, interests, but they are usually quite developmentally focused. You might not be objective sometimes, or you might miss some important details about child's personality. So it's very important to write this type of summative assessment well. So in the previous part 1, I mentioned child's profile, which is a type of summative assessment. You also can meet different forms of this assessment, such as portfolio. That's also quite interesting collation of observations. And digital documentation creates digital portfolios. Yeah, so that could then pre-fill the summative assessment. Depends on the application that you use. So what the summative assessment is not giving us? As I was saying, it might not reflect ongoing change. It captures only what you documented, and if you didn't document some things, they go under radar as well. Plus, educators often are not giving enough time to sit down and look through all the observations. Plus, you might not have enough contributions from others, and it's not really well rounded as well. The key drawback that it often is or comes across as deficit focused. So, for example, I had a conversation with my colleague, family daycare educator, and she showed me the report of her child, and she was quite disappointed that this report was skewed towards what she didn't do or cannot yet do. And of course, it upset her because she started to worry about her child. And she disagreed with the evaluation because as a parent, she observes a child in different circumstances and might have insight that we need to take on board. And that's why I'm for formative assessment more than summative. So it cannot be done without involving all stakeholders. Let's look at transitional report. You probably remember them from your school. And if you are a kindergarten teacher in Australia, you wrote transitional reports for primary schools. There is a myth that primary school teachers do not read them. If you are a primary school teacher, please comment under this video if you are actually ever reading these reports, because they do take time to prepare. And they should be done now by kindergarten teachers of kindergarten funded programs. It's a comprehensive report during transitions between educational levels or programs. To prepare a transitional report, you need, as I said, to focus on some, as I was saying in the previous part 1, learning tool in Victoria looks for communication, interaction, symbols and text, identity and community, social aspect, learning and communication literacy, thinking skills, learning dispositions, well-being emotions, well-being movement. And they are all strengths-based, yet they do have a scale of where a child falls into. So, for example, competent, not yet competent, or showing increasing, or with increasing confidence. If you want to look at transitions as well, transitional statements, I made a video about transitional statements by AERO or IRO. It's a research organization that developed fantastic tools, and it's evidence-based, but it's also criticized or critiqued by childhood teachers who believe that this is a narrow tool and it is not strengths-based. So there is a reflection, there is a debate, and it's good to have discussions about things like that, of course. The good tool should summarize child's development, but also if we look at we need to have and national quality framework, we need to have interest, child strengths, child dispositions, and child culture. And we need to look at the whole child, right? So does it capture the whole child, or is it only focusing on skills that are called school readiness? Big question, right? But it's really important, and we always consider why we do this observation. Why? These transitional reports are shared with families to help with smooth transition and help to support child at school better. It also supports primary school teachers who will have child in their class, and this continuity, yes, so remember this principle, continuity and transitions, requires coordination between different stakeholders and educational settings, including health allies, specialists. So that's the summative assessment. Next type of observation we're going to look at is video observation. So video observation is more common these days because of iPad, and due to new changes related to child safety, this type of observation can only be done with this center iPad that doesn't leave the premises, and the information that you record should be kept safe. So there are a few new limitations about using video recordings. Before, my students would go on placement and some centers would be lenient and would allow them to record. Even I used to record. I'm always conscious about children faces. But sometimes I do recordings where you don't see faces, you see hands, etc. But now you're not allowed to do any of that as well. So you're just not allowed to bring your device. You need to lock it. And that's also quite interesting and new development. So consent, privacy considerations, sharing these videos, all this now covered by the new regulations. This type of observation allows for repeated analysis. So for example, you are watching behavior or skills that are social skills or language or interactions, and you want deeper insights on these interactions. Because if you are just using jottings, you might not see subtleties such as body language, gestures, non-verbal communication that is happening. I think videos are great. They are time consuming in terms of looking at them, but you can always share them with interested stakeholders. For example, if you are talking about some kind of a behavior of concern or challenging behavior dysregulation with, let's say, occupational therapist or psychologist, you can always show them the recording. Same with families. You have evidence, and this is a good evidence to record child participation or lack of thereof. Next one is sociogram. I am planning to create a video about sociograms as well, because it's undervalued type of assessment. It's a visual representation of child social relationships within a group, showing interactions and preferences. I think it's a great one. I had to do it as part of my course. I will show you a sample in a second. You need to create a sociogram to illustrate usually connections, friendships. I did play preferences, so where do they go? But I think who their friends are and how do they interact with their peers is probably the most important question for this age group. And it provides good visual snapshots of how they interact. Is it one-way communication? Are there attempts by other children to interact with this child? Is there response? Yeah. Also, it allows you to see sometimes child's thinking process or their choices, agency. It's great for, I guess, showing the complexity of social network and interactions, but may not capture subtleties of relationships over time. You need also to capture those dialogues and voices, which sociogram doesn't capture. Here is an example of sociogram that is focusing on staff interactions. So as a student, I was given a task to observe interactions between staff, how Lenita interacted with Lynn or Carrie or Emily or Trish or Jasmine, and you can see what's happening. It's very interesting because it does show us what's happening. There is a date, there are some interactions, yes, so changing nappies, tidying up, so who is doing what. Sometimes helps to have an insight into responsibilities of educators as well. An interesting type of observation for sure. This is a sociogram for the child and their movements. So that's a little child who I observed, Charlie. He spent quite a lot of time moving around, and this really shows us the outdoor play. The only thing it doesn't show is time slot. Now I'll go back and I'll cover what the time slot am I covering. So, but also shows you the growth in terms of your abilities to write observations, and you can see that this is the beginning stage. Next one is mind maps. I have special videos on mind maps. So you can find my videos how to use mind maps for observations, how to use mind maps for curriculum planning. And it's a really amazing tool. I will show you how I used mind maps with children in a second, but it is a visual representation usually of children's ideas, thoughts, and thinking process. It could be done with the teacher as well when you are doing inquiry, and that's one of my favorite types of observations, honestly. It allows you to see the voice of children, the words. Also, it's great to see the thinking process and the ideas. I love to add these mind maps to the room so that children can revisit the concepts that they have covered. It might not capture the depth or complexity of children's ideas because these discussions take time and you also need to write them down. But educator also needs to have tools like poster paper, markers, or create mind map on the iPad as they go, or use flow books. Webbing is very similar, but it is more like a diagram that links related ideas and concepts. Mind maps, they are created by Tony Buzan, and they are very unique and they're colorful. So they kind of mirror our brain neuron structure, while webbing is more like a typical diagram that you've learned about at school. It reveals connections between concepts and ideas. It's also part of inquiry learning or project-based approach. Here is a mind map that I created with children on how to name our pet rats. And you can see that children's ideas: where do they like to sleep? Did you bring them, Kate? What are they eating? What are these? And then we named them Roxy and Bubbles. This is an example of webbing. Webbing is what you do when you are considering concepts. And as you can see here, there's lots of colorful ideas about tires, and they're learning about tires. These are not all types of observations, of course. There are many others, such as one of my favorite is all about me, and I will show you this type of observations. Also, there are tools that people mix and match. For example, learning notes. They are somewhat a mixture of learning stories and jottings. Picture observations are always great, but I also like snapshot. Snapshot is a jotting that combines pictures or images, and it's very easy to capture children's thinking this way. This is a type of snapshot as well. You add child's voice, you add some pictures of the activity, and then a little bit of analysis. But you also can create some important overviews using 3 pictures collage that shows development of things you've done as part of the project. Samples always great to display, and I really like jottings that are done in a journal. Sometimes you have to add images to demonstrate friendship or involvement of child in the activities. That's what people usually do in early child service. But sometimes the moment is so precious, like this one, when you see this thinking process, and these pictures help me to understand what's happening and what was going on in terms of thinking. So they were exploring ropes and weaving, and they learned a lot about tying things, and they were very interested in knots. And I thought that this would be a really great idea to ask the child to represent the ideas, and they did their own representation. So that is a snapshot. It could also be qualified as a learning story or an anecdotal record, but a very short learning story, of course. Jottings is something that I started with. A lot of students know this form. It's called All About Me, and that's a unique type of gathering information about child from the family. This is a really good one. They all look different, and they help to collect information from the child, the family, and then start building this portfolio. This is it from me. What we were looking at is Essential Guide to Writing Children's Observation in Early Childhood Education. Okay, if you liked it, consider purchasing it on PayHip. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and I am going to post more in-depth videos on different types of observations to support you all amazing educators. Hey educator, if you are looking for more curriculum ideas, don't forget to click subscribe. And if at least one insight from this video resonated with you, don't forget to share it with your colleagues. Let's grow Storykate community. Join us.